So now let's shift to differentiating according to process. And to do that, I'd like you to think for just a minute about a meal that you enjoy, but that you don't already know how to prepare. Something you love to eat, but you don't know how to cook for yourself. And then I'd like you to think about a follow-up question. How would you prefer to learn to make that dish? Would you prefer to watch an expert use the same recipe? Would you prefer to cooperate with other inexperienced cooks to learn to make that meal? Or would you prefer trial and error by yourself alone? And your answer to that reflects something important about your learning style, your comfort level with different approaches to processing new material. When we talk about differentiating according to process, we're talking about the activities learners use to make sense of the content. So differentiating according to process can start as small as simple scaffolding. Let's go back to that content that we decided was so important that we didn't want to create variation because it was critical information that all students should experience in a single format. Students are going to come to that content, though, with different levels of reading ability, background knowledge, or interest in the subject. Not 30 different levels, but a few different levels. And so these groups, however you imagine them, could benefit from having different processes to work through that critical content, different levels of support based on those traits, reading ability, background knowledge, or interest in the subject. Learners that are especially strong in an area, let's say reading ability, might need little to no support from you beyond simply providing the content material. Learners that are more middle of the road in terms of that skill might benefit from a moderate amount of support, say a reading guide that helps them identify and ponder the most important ideas or information shared in the reading. Finally, readers who struggle significantly in that phase, here with reading ability, might need that reading along with a table-setting mini-lesson before the reading to help give them a framework for the content. Here we're not changing the standard, and we're not even changing the content, but we're allowing for different processes that best allow student groups to be successful with the material that we, as teachers, have identified as critically important. One more thing it's worthwhile to mention here. Some readers may already have a solid handle on the information this unit of content presents, and from their position, the content doesn't offer any new learning. For this group, differentiation suggests curriculum compacting, just a fancy phrase that means not forcing students to process material they already know and understand. For these students, a more advanced challenge, perhaps even one they seek out and evaluate for the instructor, would be better stewardship of their time and this learning opportunity. Differentiation according to process can also be more complicated and involved than simple scaffolding. But I still want to caution that we're not talking about having 30 different options for students to interact with content. Although there are many ways to imagine options, one way of thinking about it is according to these 3 clear models. For instance, are you inviting students to engage with material through an interactive lecture? Direct instruction, when it is focused, brief, and involving, can be a spectacular learning opportunity for some students. Direct instruction can be even more powerful when it includes varied types of input, mixing in problem solving, case studies, or video segments, for instance, to give students opportunities to engage with information. Or are you inviting students to engage with the material through a cooperative learning task? Some students learn best when they work with classmates toward a common goal, which might take the form of a team investigation, a game or contest, a debate, or a literature circle. These processes may prove better doorways for some students to some material than even exceptionally planned and executed direct instruction. Or finally, are you inviting students to engage with the material through an inquiry project? Inquiry projects begin with real-world problems, and they give students the opportunity to direct their research and investigation, with teachers serving more as resource facilitators than directors. For some students, in some situations, the authenticity and independence of this scenario is a powerful motivation for learning. All these are purposeful processes, activities that allow learners to make sense of content. But each approach serves some learners better than others based on their interests, personality, learning style, etc. Earlier, I mentioned that when you provide student choice in terms of content, you amplify motivation and feelings of autonomy and self-control. Those same benefits result when you provide options in terms of process. So when it comes to differentiating according to process, can I imagine a classroom in which some students are reading the textbook with a teacher-provided reading guide, while another group cooperates in a game-oriented competition, and another group debates the value of Greek plays for today's audience, and another group considers fiction related to Greek theater and literature circles, and another group critiques video segments related to Greek theater, and another group works through a textbook reading guide after mini lectures from the teacher to frame their learning? Yes, I can. However, as we wrap up this part of our talk on differentiating according to process, I want to emphasize again that this is not what I'm asking you to do. Instead, what I'm asking you to consider is where there might be one place in one of your lessons where you could provide more than one way for your learners to process the content that you put in front of them. Not 6 different ways at once, but where you might add one more path for them to have a positive interaction with the content that you have selected as important. That's a first healthy step in differentiating according to process. This range of examples just gives you some ideas about what options might exist.